Welcome everybody. I am the air quotes comedian, a man who, in a statement issued by police that said didn't fit the description of a comedian, and this is the Polemics podcast. Welcome. So, I had this friend, right, and he was gay. He didn't want anybody to know he was gay, and so he stayed in the closet. However, one day he came out of the closet and found that, actually, nobody really cared that he was gay and everything was just fine for him. I had this other friend and she was transgender. She didn't want anybody to know she was transgender, and so she stayed in whatever the transgender equivalent of the closet is. However, one day she came out of whatever the transgender equivalent of the closet is and found, happily, that nobody really cared that she was transgender and everything was just fine for her. It stretches credulity, but I had yet another friend and he was black. He didn't want anybody to know he was black, so he joined the Los Angeles Police Department. Remember when the Los Angeles Police Department stopped Rodney King on the highway and proceeded to beat the ever-loving shit out of him because they knew they were being videotaped and hoped that they would be appearing on the television show America's Funniest Videos? Remember when the LAPD officers who beat the ever-loving shit out of Rodney King went to criminal court as defendants and were acquitted of any wrongdoing by a racist, cop-loving jury who were perhaps a little bit confused that the video evidence appeared to be an entry for the television show America's Funniest Videos? Remember when, as a direct consequence of this obscene miscarriage of justice, that people of colour took to the streets and had a good old riot that was caught on videotape and appeared on the television show The Evening News under the headline "Uppity Black People Threaten the Status Quo of Our White Supremacy"? I think the problem stems from the fact that the police have the wrong equipment. I mean, who in the community feels safe around a poorly educated yet heavily armed and armour-plated thug with a superiority complex and a donut fetish? Instead of a handgun, they should carry a handbag, preferably one with cookies in it. Pulling a gun on a criminal is hardly going to de-escalate a tense situation, is it? But open up your police issue handbag and pull out a cookie, you're much more likely to find that you made a new friend. Maybe they didn't want to rob the convenience store really. You know, maybe they were just a bit grumpy because of some low blood sugar. I think the problem comes from the fact that the police have the wrong equipment. Having substituted their handguns with handbags, it would be unfair to leave them without some kind of weapon. How can they brutalise innocent communities of colour without a weapon? But instead of a baton or a nightstick, they should have swimming pool noodles. I can't speak for Rodney King, but I suspect he would have favoured being mercilessly beaten with swimming pool noodles rather than with iron bars coated in toughened plastic. I think the problem definitely stems from the fact that the police have the wrong equipment. Instead of a police car with its infuriatingly loud sirens and seizure-inducing flashing lights, they should have a clown car. That's a much more appropriate vehicle for a police personnel whose training consists of a week-long seminar on how everybody who isn't police is clearly a criminal and, in the case of people of colour, clearly a dangerous criminal who should be summarily executed whenever possible. Stick the cops in a clown car and you might see the community suddenly finds their occupying force to be a little more palatable. Instead of sirens, they'd have that little hooter, wouldn't they? And upon arriving at the situation, the clown car would completely fall apart in a comic fashion, leaving the alleged criminals in such a state of mirth that the situation would immediately dissipate with gales of laughter. And the police, as they currently stand, are a joke, but unfortunately they're the kind of joke written by a fever-dreaming authoritarian cunt who regularly jerks it to their framed portrait of General Augusto Pinochet. I mean, what kind of police do we want, if any? Do we want 28-year-old Robbie Sykes, recently discharged from the military, where they frequently came in their pants as they shot brown-coloured children in the face in the name of upholding democracy, who comes home to his wife, who he regularly beats to within an inch of her life? Don't give me that fucking look. We all know that domestic abuse is a prerequisite for being a police. Who wears armour to work just in case one of their innocent victims has the gall to defend themselves from him? Who has more weaponry strapped to their body than the arms on display at a Raytheon swap meet? Who was taught more killology classes during their training, which is a real thing and not a joke, taught how to kill people more than actual law, and has to have qualified immunity because they know fuck all about the law or basic morality. Sorry, Your Honour, I was unaware that it was illegal for me to shove my gun up Mrs. Woman of Colour's snatch in order to find out where I could get a location for her 5-year-old son, who looks like a fully grown and dangerous man that needs to be shot on sight for jaywalking in a dream he had last night. Is that really the kind of police we want? Racist, spouse-beating, entitled, Nazi pyjama-wearing, donut-consuming cunts who are ignorant of the law and yet somehow have permission to be more like Judge fucking Dredd than Dixon of Dock Green? Blue Lives Matter? What the actual fuck? Because, in fact, blue lives don't fucking matter. When was the last time you saw police wearing any other colour than black? So instead of Blue Lives Matter... That's it. That's the end of this episode. Be sure to hit the dislike button and don't speak of this to anybody. I'm really proud of myself. I didn't call the police pigs once. Fucked it.